Welcome to the Arborist Blueprint Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Kurt Stenberg, or Kurt the Arborist, as you may know me on Instagram. On this episode, we have Mark Chisholm. Maybe you've heard of him. In case you haven't, I plugged his name into ChatGPT to see what they would come up with as far as an introduction for Mark Chisholm. So here we go. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. Mark Chisholm is a world-renowned arborist, 3-time international tree climbing champion, and an industry leader with over 30 years of experience. He owns and operates Aspen Tree Expert Company, a family-run business in New Jersey, and collaborates with industry-leading organizations like Steel, Teufelberger, and Cask to promote safety, education, and innovation in arboriculture. Beyond his impressive technical skills, Mark is a sought-after speaker and a mentor, sharing his experience on leadership, career longevity, and strategic business planning, including insights on building, growing, and transitioning successful tree care companies. Mark's passion, dedication, and vision continue to inspire arborists worldwide. Dang. A few run-on sentences in there from ChatGPT, but I think you get the idea. Mark Chisholm, yeah, you probably know of him, but myself, I'm assuming that having Mark Chisholm on the podcast is going to be drawing some new audience. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on who I am, Kurt the Arborist, as I call myself, and kind of what led me here. So I haven't always been an arborist. Maybe you already know this, but I used to be a career firefighter EMT for about 16 years and eventually expired, I guess you would say, through mental health. I just couldn't do that job anymore, and the Workers' Compensation Board restricted me and I had to find a new career. So after a couple of years of kind of floundering around, I eventually found arboriculture. I don't know how it kind of came up. I know I did some job exams and horticulture kept coming up. I had no idea what either of them were. I thought it meant working in a greenhouse maybe. But yeah, I came across a picture or something, a guy climbing in trees with a chainsaw, and I was like, this is it. I knew I had to do it. So being a mature individual, I didn't really want to work my way from the ground up, literally, hauling branches and doing all that kind of thing. I know there's importance, of course, to doing that, but I thought I could maybe save some time because I had a bit of a values checklist on kind of what I wanted in life. And these were things like having time off, which I already had at the fire department because it was 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off. So I didn't want to fall into a Monday to Friday type job. I wanted to work outside. I wanted to earn a bunch of money for the time that I put in. So I knew that jobs that required physical fitness or that were a bit dangerous would provide this. So firefighting was similar to arboriculture in that sense, that for the time put in, you got paid quite a bit. So I knew it was exciting. It was outside and I got to take care of something, trees in this case, and not people who were a bit disgruntled and, some of those challenging environments that we dealt with the ambulance and that sort of thing. So anyways, I worked for a couple of other companies and got a little bit of experience and kind of watched how they ran things and went to Arboriculture Canada and got a few courses. And before you knew it, I had started my own tree company. So I now own and operate my own tree company called Cochrane Tree Care here in Cochrane, Alberta, Canada. We've been in business now for about 6 years, I guess you'd say. And we're a small company. I have a small little 6-inch chipper, and I'm actually in the process right now of buying my first chip truck with an actual dump box. So I'm not shoveling out the mulch from the back and breathing in all the spores, which I found out if you're doing, by the way, wear a mask, especially if it's sat there for any period of time, because breathing that in is like instant chest infection. But anyways, I digress. So now we're sitting at about 3 of us, and I'm thinking of hiring a new person and expanding this year. So I have a 3-person crew in the field, and I can kind of step back because about a year or maybe 2 years ago, I realized that with my brain, I don't know if it's an ADHD brain or what, entrepreneurial brain, whatever you want to call it. Like I always need something to kind of work on. I realized that Cochrane Tree Care had a bit of a ceiling. I was only servicing kind of my local little area and everything, and that was great, but we'd already achieved this. So I thought, how can I do better and how can I give back to the industry? So I thought about maybe doing some training and getting my instructor level kind of status. So I did through Arboriculture Canada. I took a number of courses there and eventually took Train the Trainer, which I highly recommend for any of you up in Canada here. A great course. And then was able to start assistant instructing with them. And that was fantastic. but still wasn't feeding my full bucket. So I kind of put it out there to the universe. It sounds woo-woo, but I was like, what could I do to give back? What can I do to grow upon my passion for trees and arboriculture? And sure enough, I believe it was that night, it hit me, this huge download, like Neo in the Matrix, of these ideas that came through for what is now Atmos Tree. And if you haven't heard of Atmos Tree, it's a regenerative alliance that I created for arborists out there, because I realized we were all out there and the industry was really leaning and pointing towards tree removals. Like you go to these big expos and things, and there's huge, heavy equipment and a lot of courses out there all designed around how to use a chainsaw and how to cut a tree down. And no one's kind of really stopping to say, hey, does that tree need to get cut down in the first place? Or can we preserve that tree? Or why are there insects on it? All these sorts of things. So I started out with what I call the 2-to-1 tree cycle program. So Atmos Tree is this alliance of arborists, like I said, where arborist companies from around North America so far are joining, and it's free to join. And all we do is we charge a recycling fee to our clients that require a tree removal. Of course, with Atmos Tree, we're trying to promote not removing the tree, and that education is coming out here now, trickling out over time. But essentially, the foundation of it all is the 2-to-1 tree cycle program. We charge $20 in the US and we charge $25 in Canada. And we just throw that on the customer's bill, and we're getting awesome feedback. I mean, clients are used to already paying recycling fees for tires and computers and all these things out there already. So I thought, why not trees? Like the tree has an amazing impact on the biodiversity and the environment and all these things. And a lot of arborists appreciate trees, but maybe they don't have a tree planting division, or it's just not feasible for them to do that. Or there's some obscure municipal program where you have to pay deposits on these trees and it's expensive. And I was just like, let's just charge a fee together collectively. We'll collect those fees. And every quarter, Atmos Tree collects those fees. And then we look after planting Arborist Alliance specific plantations around the world. We've already started one plantation north of us in Entwistle, Alberta. We planted 1,500 trees already this year. And in the spring of 2025, we're already working on planning another plantation. It's going to be near me again. Eventually, I want to plant near everyone that joins so we can get spread out a bit more. But of course, the ripple effect starts here as we expand out. But this one's going to be really cool. We're going to do like a side-by-side conventional type planting versus an Atmos Tree style regenerative planting. So some people call it like a Miyawaki method, or, it's just mimicking nature, honestly. So it's going to be higher densities. We're gonna like test everything and put in a lot of native species, bare root kind of stuff, and just show the benefits of just simple little changes in how we can improve how we plant, and then take this template and share it with municipalities and other people doing reclamation or reforestation, and show them that if you plant denser and maybe you mulch with organic matter and you include cover crops and shrubs and all these different things, that you can have faster growth, better growth, growth that's more resistant to insects and disease and pests, greater survivability, all that kind of stuff. So in my heart, I know it's going to work, but we need something to actually show people that it does work in a side-by-side plantation. So I'm super excited about that, because we can record it and share that story for years to come. So anyways, that's Atmos Tree. There's tons more. I won't get too far into it because I've already blabbered on enough about it. But if you're interested in joining the Alliance, and I would really appreciate and encourage you to reach out. If you visit atmostree.org, you can plug your information in there if you're a company owner, or if not, you can just put your name in to join our newsletter that comes out every month, where we release articles on regenerative arboriculture and tree plant health and things to help boost your business and give you more confidence to do tree preservation and charge for consultations and that kind of thing. That's coming out in the newsletter. But otherwise, plug your name there in the contact form, and you'll get an invite to join the Alliance right away. It's a super quick online onboarding process, and you can access all of our logos and our deckling and the marketing material that we provide for companies. So you can post it on your website and on social media. We do social media collaborations. And basically, we want to boost you guys. We want to get you guys more successful and attracting more environmentally conscious clients out there. And that way you're earning more and we're replacing more trees that get removed, because ultimately at the end of the day, that's the bread and butter, and it's inevitably going to happen. So that's kind of what it's all about. So please reach out if you have any ideas. I have lots of people reaching out to me all the time as far as ideas that they have a firewood business or they have a place that they can plant out in their area, whatever. Anyways, reach out. I'm so happy to hear from all of you, and I really appreciate all the support already. We have over 40 companies joined up. It's super awesome. It's blowing my mind, and it's all thanks to our Alliance members that are psyched and joined already. Okay, well, I hope you lasted through that, but let's get on to the podcast with Mark. We're talking about leadership, mentorship, career longevity, staying in shape, a little bit of business, and just overall success and wisdom and knowledge from Mark. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks again. Take care, everybody. Hey, Mark. It's Kurt. How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you having me on. I'm always excited to do these discussions. It's fun for me.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I mean, there's lots of things I'd love to ask you, and I'm sure you're probably busy in the world of doing interviews and speaking, and you probably get asked a lot of the same sort of questions, or do you find that?
Honestly, not exactly. I don't get the same questions a lot, believe it or not. I get a couple of questions that might be very generic, like, about my history and when I started climbing, for example. That's generic. Or when, about our company, but I don't get a lot of same questions. Once we start talking, I think it goes where it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I first got into arboriculture about 6-ish years ago, I took a couple of courses through Arboriculture Canada. That's where I met Johnny. Johnny.
Of course.
Yeah, and you came up a bunch of times on the internet because I was just searching like arborists. I really wanted to get into it, and it was the fall, and I couldn't get a job anywhere because it was just the end of season up here. So I saw you come up in a whole bunch of different places. But how did you end up being this, quote, online kind of superstar arborist? I know you're.
You see the reaction you get, yeah.
Yeah, I know. But people are going to know who you are. So, but I don't know the full history of you. I know you were a champion climber. Is that correct? Or just tree climbing champion from all of the events?
Yeah, different. Yeah, for sure. A state champion many times and a world champion a few times. Yeah.
Is that kind of how you broke into the arborist world as far as getting more exposure and notoriety beyond just like your local tree company?
Honestly, I think it's a few things. It's kind of like steps that got me to where I think I am now. And I think it started initially by being active in the industry with our family business locally, got us into the local front because, my father has always done a lot of this stuff locally, teaching, educating, sharing, volunteering on boards, you name it. My brother, the same way. My mother always did. But I think for me personally, that was the start locally. And then it grew from there because of probably a lot of different things, including timing. I think timing was big too. But actually, before I became the world champion, TCIA asked me to speak that year at their expo prior to the competition, and just by chance I ended up winning that summer right before we were going to go to expo, and then they kind of advertised that the current world champion or ITCC champion was going to be speaking at the demo tree area at TCI Expo, and I think that's what started the more of the broad scale kind of like getting in front of the public eye that way on a bigger front. I think that was the initial push, and then networking just happens from there. I developed a lot of friendships, that we ended up working together. A lot of people I can name from every year that I've ever been a part of the industry. I just have tons of people I've been blessed to work with and to know. And then professional relationships help it grow even more, like my relationship with steel, with New England Ropes, which is now Teufelberger, and even Cask, Cask Safety out of Italy. Those relationships helped me even grow even beyond where I was on my own. So I think that's kind of like the 20,000 foot level look of what happened in my career as on that front. But there's a lot of little things along the way too.
Right. And you said those companies that you just gave some shout out to there that support you and you work with them doing some speaking or whatever it might be, you endorse their products, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You said they kind of helped you grow and expand in that way. And how so? Like, do you mean through speaking engagements? Did you work with them kind of on a bit of a personal, like, or developmental level in that sense to be more of a professional ambassador?
Again, probably all of the above. Like, let's just take my relationship with New England Ropes. It was built on being an ambassador for them, to use the product in front of people and get the word out within my network of people. And it was also helping to design products, new ropes, new designs, and things like that. Cool. On the idea of Cask, it's the same thing. It was give us your feedback, help us design parts of the helmet. What do you like? What do you not like about these helmets and that helmet? But then it was also let's do safety trainings together. We'll sponsor it, and that's kind of like the biggest part of my relationship with steel. It's probably it's probably a generalization to say it's really built on just training, but that was the birth of our relationship in 2001. It was my friends at Steel wanted to help share within our community, especially within the arborist community. And they knew I was doing it, and they liked the way I handled things. They liked I'd say my values and my way of life as well. We aligned very well that way. And the professional relationship grew from that moment on. And since that time, they put me in places I never would have gotten without them as well, because, not all of these different opportunities, I'll call them, come my way through me. Some come through Steel, where they say, hey, we're going to do a video shoot for this event. Can you be a part of it? And then they put me there. Or they say, hey, there's an event. We want you to speak at this event. Would you go to that event? And that's kind of how it goes from there as well. So it's kind of
nice.
Like back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
And then kind of snowballs, and the more you do, the more exposure there is. And so you kind of just fall into it to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. Were you just kind of following the flow, essentially? Like things would come and you entertain the stuff that you like? And
there was no design behind it on my end. There was no, let's do this, or I got to try this, or I want to do that for the most part. It also helped that at the same time I started my own website with the forum, treebuzz.com. And Treebuzz has a following and has, let's just say, people who are in high-end positions for the industry who visit there and they say, hey, would you come speak at our event in, say, Minneapolis or California or whatever. And and even a relationship I developed in other countries like Norway. A friend of mine, I did some trainings over there for climbing, rigging, and then crane workshops over the course of a few years in Norway, because he was a Treebuzz member and wanted to share like a style of education that I was part of, or was U.S. based in some ways.
Cool. So you're doing a bunch of training and stuff as well.
Yes.
So you mentioned some of your values that sort of aligned with Steel or these companies. Can you expand on that, like your purpose and values in that sense? That
Yeah, sure. So I think to put it kind of simply, we both value education for two different groups, more or less. If you want to get simple on it, it's the professional group and then a non-professional group. So when I get to speak to the general public, not professional based, usually the message that we both like, that we push, meaning it's a goal of both of ours, is check a box that says, hey, trees are valuable. Look at their value. Then that's a box. The next box might be trees need care. That's another box. And then another box might be trees need professionals to care for in certain situations, because otherwise you don't know what you're doing properly to help the tree, or maybe it's dangerous, so
Yeah.
we get those messages out together. Those things are very important to, I can say confidently, to both myself and my friends at Steel. And the same thing with the professional front. I don't think anybody in the industry would say anything other than what's the most important thing to do in tree care. It's to work safe, and to take training to make sure you're staying focused and aware, and you're training to the latest standards and all that. And so
Yeah.
that's a big message for Steel as well, and for myself. So again, we just get together on these messages, and it suits both of us in the right way. And I think
Right.
we both operate on a very similar standpoint, meaning we're not chasing dollars. The motivation is genuine to both of us, in that what we want to do for what we would both say is the right reason more than any other reason. And I say this confidently too, that we work well together because we don't differ from our values, or we don't hesitate from leaning on integrity in a lot of ways, and we don't violate that ever. And I think that's an important part. This is why our relationship has lasted since 2001, is because we both protect it and protect our brands and our relationship. And that's really what you need, I think, in a real good relationship, especially a professional one.
Yeah, definitely. And I like what you said there too. It sounds like you guys talk about trees and the value of trees and some of those things kind of before you get to here's how to fire up the chainsaw
Yeah.
and cut it down.
Yeah,
Which
for sure.
I don't know about you, but like that's just kind of my overall vibe of the arboriculture industry. Without a lot of regulation, especially up here, anybody can kind of get into it. There's no
Sure.
prerequisites essentially. So staying safe is a huge issue. I mean, there's homeowners up here all the time organizing community events to go cut up deadfall in their local villages or whatever. And, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's like some of the most dangerous tree work we do around here is standing dead and leaners and widow makers, as you know. And people are just firing up their dad's old chainsaw to go and get it done.
That's funny.
Or I mean, there's lots of arborists out there too. Just I think a lot of people just not knowing any better that there's alternatives to just removing trees. But to get into tree work,
Yeah.
removing trees is kind of just the easiest first thing to do. All you have to do is cut them. You don't have to worry about screwing it up because all you got to do is just get rid of it.
Yeah, for sure, for
But
sure.
that's
Yeah, we have
it's a
the
bit of a
same
challenge.
problems. We have the same problems in the U.S. in a lot of ways. There are areas of the country where there is a pre-qualification you have to meet in order to be an arborist and to, excuse me, like advertise for that type of work. Like in New Jersey, you have to be a licensed tree expert or a licensed tree care operator. Is like kind of like the ISA CA and the ISA BCMA, same kind of
Okay.
concept, two different levels. But yeah, most places you don't need anything, which is a real shame because people then don't associate the skills you need or the level of risk you take on, and I think that's the big missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, definitely. There's not a lot of awareness. I mean, I didn't even know arborists existed before I just kind of came across them and then decided I wanted to be one all of a sudden,
That's
all at the same time. But yeah, and the greater you get at your skills, being an arborist, sometimes we run into this problem. I'm sure you guys do too, where you show up and there's maybe only a couple of you for like a big job, but you're so dialed in, you can get your job done, prune this, prune that, remove that tree, and get out of there and make it look so easy and have it done so quickly that some homeowners, not all of them, like many of them appreciate us, but there's always some that are just like, oh my God, that was so fast. Like, why does this cost so much? And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this took years and lots of training and skills to make sure that every movement I'm doing is appropriate and it's working towards me getting out of here efficiently and safely. And you almost wonder if they'd rather it take 5 times as long so they feel like they're getting their money's worth.
Yeah. My good friend Tom Dunlap, who works with me on Tree Buzz, he always has a funny saying I like to think of in this is that some homers think they're paying by the pound when you're pruning, and it's not really the case. It's not what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want a lot of more brush on the ground just because you're paying a certain amount. I think that's funny.
I know it's like, yeah, less is more with pruning most oftentimes, and but I still bring I just know psychologically, like I bring the homeowners out to come see what we've done with pruning, like before we move
Mm,
too much and put the tools away, especially move the tools away, because usually I was like, oh, one more branch, but I want
mm,
them to see, like, the brush does look like quite a bit, even if it's not very much, before you clean it all up, and
yep.
because if you do it properly, oftentimes the trees are supposed to be like naturally target pruned, and it's not
Mm,
supposed to look much different,
right.
maybe cleaned up a little bit, but
Yep. Yep.
yeah, it's tricky dealing with that. So one thing I noticed about you, I was contemplating this earlier today, is that you have a lot of different skill sets, and I kind of relate to some of them in the fact that you're in arboriculture, but you're, champion climber, and that's one specific skill set to be really good at, but also business owner and a leader and a trainer and then a speaker. Like these are all sort of completely but not different skill sets. And why do you think that is, or what kind of overlap do you think is there that allows you to be successful, I guess you would say, at all these different aspects? You know what I mean? Compared to some arborists where it's just like they just go in, they're good at their job, they can use a tree, use a saw to cut down a tree and whatever, but they're not ever going to be a champion climber, or they're not ever going to be a public speaker or a trainer. And, have you ever thought about that?
No one's ever asked me that question, by the way. So it's just new ground for me. No, I guess, yeah, I guess I have thought about it on some level, but I think for me personally, the things I learned on how to be a good climber in the workplace, I learned from my father and other mentors around me. I think all the things that makes that happen is what I used to look at every skill set. And actually, you said it perfectly: is they don't always overlap. There may be some overlap. Like I'll give you a great example. Some competition climbers are not good on the job site.
Right.
Some job site workers are fantastic on a job site, but they just can't get their head around a competition. And I think
Or
in
they're
order,
terrible leaders or trainers.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and to that point, how many climbing arborists do you know? I know a bunch that are fantastic arborists that I would hire in a minute, but they don't do very well as a business owner.
Yeah.
And I think it's what you said. They're all different skill sets that you really need to focus on how to get good at that and not lean on, well, I'm a good climber, so this is going to come naturally. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so whenever I want to try to get better at something, I think I approach it the same way. I sink my teeth in. I live it really, day in and day out. I almost obsess about it to the point where you only have two choices. Either you get bored with it because you're not good,
Hmm.
or you get good enough that you enjoy it, and then you get better because you enjoy it. So I
Right.
think that's the other part of the equation for me is I just thoroughly enjoy all the things you're talking about. Every aspect of what we're talking about, there's something I really love about it, and I think it helps you become good enough at it just by loving it and understanding it.
Yeah. Like there's a certain drive there, or maybe you feel some sort of, I don't know, responsibility or this drive to do well and achieve things. I always contemplate this about myself too, because I've gotten into so many different things and aspects of tree work, and I'm like, why am I driven to do that? But other people are just happy, assuming they're happy just to
Mhm.
go to work every day and not be a business owner and just,
Yeah.
be out in the tree, but then go home and check out and live their life doing whatever else is they do.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like obsessing about business and building and like what's the next step. Like there's got to be something greater. And not always. I realized in the past it was more of like always chasing some sort of dopamine fix to make me happy because I needed to distract myself. But that's kind of feel or gotten a bit better over the years, but I still have this drive to kind of keep going and changing things, and I just don't know where it comes from. And I think you're similar in that sense.
Mm.
But for you, you're third generation, is that what you said?
Third generation arborist, yeah.
At the same company? Like, was the company started with by your grandfather?
No, good question. My father started our company, and my mother did back when I was about, I guess I was 5 years old. My brother was 7. But he had done tree work with my grandfather, but my grandfather never had his own business. And never didn't stick with the industry long term. He did it for a while when my dad started when he was really young too.
Oh, okay. So when you started doing it, I read that you started climbing and learning some of the stuff around the age of 12 or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm assuming you were probably hauling brush and helping out with crews as soon as you were able to or allowed to.
Yep.
But from what was the size of your company at that point? And was it called Aspen Tree
Yeah.
then?
It was always Aspen Tree Expert Company since it was started in '76. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like then compared to now?
Um, Way different, but yet very similar in some ways. Like the similarities are easy to talk through. They're just my parents started it and made it a family feel because it was family. They treated everyone like family. And believe it or not, that's stayed consistent behind everything that we're about. They've always been passionate about tree care, wanting to do the right thing. We're still doing the same thing today. That's our kind of our success story, if you will, or the recipe for success for us. But what's different is, when I was a kid working there, it was a part-time business for a while. And there was then one full-time employee and then some temporary employees on weekends only. That's when I worked there, as the weekend time as a kid. And then we grew into a full-fledged, one crew into two crews, and then grew a little bit more after that. And then kind of stayed around that size of two crews for a long time. And then got into a few other contracts that required us to have a couple more trucks and such. So let's call it 3 crews to 4 crews maybe, to where we are today, where we're sitting at around maybe 70 employees, full-time employees.
Oh, wow.
And then
70.
Yeah, about 70, and then a few.
It's a big family.
Yeah, and then a few subcontractors that work with us as well that are friends of mine, and bring another 10 or 12 guys every day. And then we have a plant healthcare and turf. I call it a division, but it's a separate LLC that's about 8 people as well.
Oh, okay. Turf like weeds and fertilizer kind of thing, like
Like aerations, seedings, that kind of thing, like care, not so much no maintenance.
right. So what point did you sort of take over? And I guess before I ask that question, you got into arboriculture obviously through the family and loved it in that sense. Were you ever pushed to kind of take things over, or was it a natural, organic decision that you wanted to do that?
For the most part, I was the one pushing to be part of the business at a young age. I loved it. I wanted to learn it all. My brother did it. My family did it. My uncle's godfather worked there on Saturdays, that same thing. And then when I was graduating high school, I wanted to make sure I was making the right choice, so I decided to go on to college and get an associate's degree in liberal arts, which gave me a good foundation to be able to enter something I was interested in. Almost decided to go down the road of like medicine or maybe anatomy and physiology as a professor at university as well, because one of my professors told me I'd be really great at being a teacher, which I had no idea. Turns out he was right. He was just wrong on the subject matter a little, that I would like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, funny how the world goes round. So that was the only time I contemplated whether I wanted to be an arborist for the rest of my life. But it took not much time to realize that this is where I really wanted to be. And I never pursued that biology degree at Rutgers University, and bailed out and went full-fledged into tree care. At the same time I started competitions, or same time I started speaking locally. Like, it all kind of came together at the right time for me. That's what I mentioned earlier about timing was important.
Right. And then how did it transition over from your dad to you as far as like business ownership and leadership training within the company? Like, where did you sort of take over, and how did you expand upon where it was at that point?
So I think as we grew, my brother and I were probably wanting to test ourselves in another way too. And My father and my mother were at a point where they didn't want to really put a lot of more effort into making the business bigger, which is understandable. You get maxed out. They were doing a lot of different jobs. So then we started laying out some framework, my brother and I, on how we could achieve goals of growing in different things, which included adding new employees, management, for example. We added a general manager as one of our first big employees to add that was new to us outside of like the norm for tree work. And so we added a good friend of mine, Alan Bowers, now, who is our general manager for the last, I think, 6 years. And that shift really helped a lot, because the thing I think a lot of arborist companies lack is understanding where putting resources into something that is scary, like hiring a high-level manager,
Right.
really pays dividends, and it's the step you need to take in order to grow to that next level. Because
You mean like a
Mhm.
business kind of mindset person,
Yeah,
right? As opposed to a,
somebody who has skills that we don't have, being arborists who are somewhat smart at business in some ways, right, but lacking in other ways. It's almost like I kind of equate it to the same way as, like, say, a tree care crew. If you need a good bucket operator, you don't necessarily need them to be a climber, and you don't necessarily hire a ground person to do that. Same thing in business. I think when you need someone who can understand how to, set up, insurance initiatives, and uh, you know, trim down some extra spending on, by financing some other facet. Like, those are skill sets, like any skill set, that either you gain them or you hire somebody who has them. That's the only way to survive as a business. And I think that's one thing that we did that was important for our strategy of growth, is because before that happened, it was my mother, my father, my brother, and myself all trying to run the business. And as we grew, we all took on more responsibility, more tasks, more growth. And eventually you can only do so much. You kind of drop some spinning plates, or you spread
right.
yourself too thin, and certain things you need to do, you're not doing as well as you should. So you call it growing pains, but at the same time, if you stay there, it could be the death of your business. So you got to you got to see those for what they are, and then strategize around how to break through those. We'll call them ceilings, if you will.
Right. And your brother, what's his role? You've mentioned him a few times. Are you guys kind of in tandem on a lot of this business with
Yeah.
Aspen?
So Aspen, as it is right now, we have a management team that we meet weekly to discuss all things business, and it is my brother and myself. It's my general manager, Alan. It's my brother's wife, Connie, who is an office administrator, and then it's also their one daughter, Autumn, who is our director of finance. Still, the family theme continues, and then one other person, Chris Brown, who runs our plant health care and turf division.
Cool.
That team is our quote unquote executive team that, with the help of some also outside sources, call you. And then my father, who's still in the business on a lot of levels, he doesn't necessarily see himself as part of the executive team, but he's definitely a big part of, let's say, visionary ideas, or if,
Right.
when we come up with a big strategy that's new, or an initiative of some level, like, say, taking on a new division somewhere, we bring him in and discuss it with him and let him weigh in, because he has all this experience and knowledge, and he's still obviously a big part of the business too, because it's, something he started, so it's his baby. So
Nice.
that's where we are now, pretty much.
So it's kind of a multiple prong approach. I'm just thinking for arborists, listening to this, a lot of us come up through the ranks, starting out as a groundie, becoming a climber, and then you're like, hey, I can do this better myself. I'm going to go start my own tree company. And we have a lot of those, right? So they're very small, and maybe 2 people, 3 people crews. And I would imagine business, or as I know from my own experience too, business getting started, just something small, is a lot different than probably business at a higher level where you already have a bunch of employees and a bunch of trucks and you're managing bigger numbers and that sort of thing. I mean, I guess there's similarities and stuff, of course, as well. But I don't know. Do you have any recommendations for people, or have you had any experience starting business from scratch in that sense, from a very small company, and how that would be different from a larger company? Because I feel like some people are probably hesitant to try and get business advice, or they don't have the funds, to hire someone to come in and help them, or they don't know when they actually need it because they think they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I think
Any
there's a
tips
lot
there, you think? Or?
there's a lot in that, honestly. I think part of me wants to make sure I don't scare anybody away who wants to start their own business, because I think it's a great thing to do. If you have the passion and the desire to do it, you should see it through and try it. The only thing I would say is that, like I said earlier, not everybody has the self-awareness to see what running a business will be like for them in the idea of how they envision it fully, and they might be getting in over their head in that regard, because there's an opportunity where people will start a business because they love trees. Okay, that's great, you love trees. Then they start a business because they want to climb trees and they're great at it. Then the business starts to grow and they're like, all right, well, now I got 2 employees because I need them, and I have a couple trucks, so now I have to support that kind of that machine, if you will. And then it means, okay, well, what else do you need to do? Well, at that point in the game, you might need to be your own mechanic, be your own salesperson, be your own, office administrator, do your own paperwork. And not everybody wants to do that or to push past that, because you'll have to do that for a while before, unless you have funds that someone's funding you, you won't be able to push past that until you do it for a while, and the business builds and grows and so on. And that's where I meant those ceilings happen. They'll hit pretty quick. So, for someone who's sitting on the sidelines saying, I'd like to start my own business because I can do this for myself, if you see it for what I just said and you want to give it a shot, go for it. I mean, I think it's great. I'm glad my father did it. My mother did it. You know what I mean? But I also would say, don't do it haphazardly. Kind of come at it with the same approach that you want to be a good arborist. Take the training when you need training. Invest in yourself. Buy the PPE. Buy the right climbing gear. Invest in the business as much as you and yourself as you invest in any other thing you're trying to do. If you do it that way, I think you'll be much more likely to be successful. And number 2, you'll probably be a lot happier too, because you've done a thought process in advance and you see it for what it is, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready for this, and I'm going to do this.
Right. And even seeking some training or reading books or whatever it might be in that business realm, and not sort of ignoring it and being like, well, I can just do all this. I'll put some ads up on Kijiji or, whatever online area you can to get work. But just because you're afraid of it, I find, at least for me, I realized that I always had a bit of a fear around not understanding how business sort of worked. So I just sort of ignored it, didn't want to take training on it. But then after you kind of read a few books, get some coaching, and it's like, oh, this big relief just kind of goes away, and you start to realize, oh, it's kind of a cool strategy thing, and you can, play with some numbers here, move some things around. It's all about making customers happy. How can you make yourself look good, like on a professional level with some of your software or whatever you're doing? I kind of found a passion for it after I got rid of that fear and accepted the fact that business is almost as like its whole other skill set. There's like being an arborist and there's being a business person.
Yep.
And if you can embody both of them, then I think you'll be successful. But
I think you said it right too, is again, investing in yourself. I've done the same thing. I mean, like I mentioned earlier briefly, it's our management team, but we also brought in outside resources, meaning a consultant firm, to come in and strategize with us, do our quarterly meetings, our annual meetings, to do a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year timeline together, and use their business sense and skills and experience to help our business and train ourselves on how to do these things as well at the same time. Because we didn't know we needed to do these weekly meetings as an executive team, and now we know we need to do those, and what the importance is, and actually how to run them, and what we're actually trying to achieve when we do them. So I think it's the same thing, honestly, as becoming good at being an arborist. You got to get good at what gear you need. You got to get good at how to run a chainsaw, how to learn about what the tree needs, how to actually do the climbing, for example. If you're going to rig, you need to know what disciplines to rig well. You need to know weights and measures and physics and angles and geometry, and there's a lot to it. And it's the same thing in business. It's just seeing it for what it is, and then spending the time to educate yourself, like you mentioned, or get education and training.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to help arborists through Atmos Tree as we grow. I want it to be a really foundational thing to support arborists in their business. And I have a bunch of ideas around this already, and it's not phased out yet, but I want to provide some sort of kickstart sort of programs for arborists that are thinking of starting their own little business, and give them some examples on how to get into it, and some basics, I guess, around business, being a small company from that sort of mindset, and maybe like an incubator or an accelerator type program, and do it on kind of a small scale where it's, you fill out some sheets, we have a couple of meetings, that kind of thing, and just get you on track with a bit of a template and sort of set you free, just so you have some sort of framework and basics around it. Because I think people also think that they have to hire someone as a business person when they make a certain amount of money and they've hit that level, and it's going to be this full-time person and they're going to work in an office. And nowadays you can get people to work for you and provide consulting online for even small amounts of time, maybe only a certain amount every week, or even in a very small stint where you work with them for a couple of weeks and then they're gone. And it can be very affordable and one of your write-offs for your company. So just some things I would recommend for people as well.
Yeah, agreed. Very good.
So being in arboriculture for so long, I kind of want to pivot here to some longevity stuff. Selfishly, I've only been in it for about 6 years, but I had a career as a firefighter EMT before that, and went through some mental health kind of transitions as I got into tree work, and learned a lot and felt very mature as I came into it, so I could kind of accelerate my process. And I was lucky enough to meet Johnny, who sort of took me under his wing. So I was learning from, didn't even realize, learned from one of the greatest dudes in the world out there training me. So I didn't have bad habits built up or anything yet.
Perfect.
So very fortunate. But only being in it for 6 years and still a small company, I'm doing a lot of the stuff myself. I'm pretty hands-on with the tools, and realizing now that training people is almost taking more time than just doing it myself, and trying to let that kind of go, but really enjoying that journey as it's morphing, as I'm sure you've been through many times. It looks like you're still out there doing some jobs with the guys and girls or whatever. But looking ahead, how do you keep yourself physically and mentally in check long term for this? Like, you've been doing it your whole life, so like 6 years is nothing on my end, and like my neck is killing me from pole pruning. My right arm is like bad tendonitis. My lower back is like I almost can't even get out there anymore. It's brutal. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm tall like you too, so maybe you have some tips. But
well, I think everyone, I don't care who you are or how old you are, when you start doing something that's physical, like tree work, like name a sport, it feels very difficult physically. It's going to drain you. It's going to cause muscle issues, soreness. You push through it, you gain strength, just like every other sport. You become stronger, more able, because the body is an amazing machine that, will build on what you tested on and get better and stronger, faster, all those things. So I think for me, a few things helped. One is at an early age, my father got me involved in physical fitness. Besides, I started with sports at a young age too. Before I even started tree work, I was in sports for, let's say, 8 years at least, like doing, I did soccer for 5 years when I was really young because my best friend did it. And then I did wrestling for 3 years. And then I got into tree work when I was getting interested in other sports like football and such. So I never did those. The only other sport I do is, as an adult, I still play ice hockey, which is a whole nother discussion, I guess. But I think what helps me be in it for the long haul, I'll pull a couple things off of a presentation I do called Longevity in Arboriculture, or as an arborist, and I'll simplify it and say that there's probably more than this, but three major pillars to think about. One is safety, because if you're not safe, you're not going to be able to do it for a long term.
Yeah.
And by safe, I don't just mean like alive. I mean not taking a debilitating injury. And I won't discredit the need for some luck in that too, because there are some unlucky accidents that can happen. It doesn't have to be tree related. You could get into a car accident and now you can't use your right arm, or your back is really a problem. I mean, so there's luck involved in being like that. So safety is number one. Number two for me would be probably have to say treating yourself as an athlete, meaning physical fitness, a good healthy diet that suits you for your goals, and then appropriate rest and recovery as needed when needed. That's probably a simplified way to say what you need on the fitness end and the dietary ends. And then the third, if I had to pick a third one, it would be staying a student for life, because number one, you become better at what you do. You also learn better ways to do what you do, which in a physical environment like tree climbing, if I still climbed with the gear I started with, or the tools I had, or the techniques I had, I wouldn't be anywhere near as effective as I am today. And I probably wouldn't be able to do it physically very good. I'd probably struggle with it, but, in all that actuality, here I am sitting here, I don't know how many years later, and I feel like I am probably just as good or better on a job site than I was when I was 25, because I stayed a student and I learned more. I learned from every person I can, and all the techniques, all the gear, all the science that comes out, I take advantage of it, I talk about it in my talk. I say very easy for me to see it personally in myself, because the year I won my first world championship, I was 26 years old. I have a video of it, and when I watch the video, I cringe. I literally look at it and go, how could that be the best climber in the world then? But things were different. You watch sports from 1940, you look at them, you go like, man, they're slow, they're this, they're that. But, so things change over time. You either change with them or you get left in the dust. And I think being a student for life means you don't get left in the dust. And on the flip side of that, the more you're involved, the more engaged you are, the more passionate you're going to be, the more you're going to enjoy what you do. The more you enjoy what you do, the more you're going to be like wanting to learn. You're going to get better, and you're going to push through plateaus personally, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. You're going to push through plateaus and become better at what you do for the long haul. That's how you become good at it for a long time, I think.
Yeah, you got to find that passion somehow. And if that passion is waning, I think that's always okay too. Like, people can switch it up and change careers, whatever. But I think ultimately at the root for everyone, like, you need to find what your life purpose really is and align everything you're doing with that. Have some sort of regular check-ins on your values and what you're doing and the purpose of it. And that ultimately will fuel where you're going. And if it remains arboriculture and tree work, I would hope that would organically translate into lifelong learning, like you're saying, and adapting to the changes and growing. And which, I mean, no one, I think, really likes change. It brings up some fears and some angst in people. But once you, I think, face it and get over it, then it's not so bad. And that you get that relief kind of feeling again and realize you learned something new. And then all of a sudden you're excited about it again. And then you're progressing and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think there's also there's a lot to be said too for, this isn't my quote, by the way, but, people don't grow in their comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort zone in order to really grow and progress as a person. It doesn't matter if we're talking physical or mental or whatever. You don't grow when you stay in your comfort zone. So you got to get out of it, And the other part about being able to do it like I still do, I think it's because I want to say I get it naturally from my father. I know I talk about him a lot, but I can't not credit him for the things I see he did for me, growing up. And one of those is the work ethic. And I think what I've learned in the fitness world and in life in general, when you stop doing hard stuff,
Yeah.
you're no longer able to do hard stuff. And what I find is that the medium stuff now is your hard stuff. Like hard stuff to
Right.
one person is not hard to another person. Why? Because it's relative. I put it in someone's perspective the other day, and I said, think about weather, right? Someone from where you're at says it's cold outside
Yeah.
is not the same as somebody from Georgia in the U.S. saying it's cold outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with hard work and physical, difficult things.
Man,
Something
it's just perspective.
yeah, and I think you lose perspective when you stop doing your full range. Your range gets to be here, and next thing you know, this is the high, this is the low, whereas you had a range like this before you did that, and so on and so on. So
Yeah.
I hesitate to say it any plainer than this, but I'm gonna and just say, you know, stop avoiding the hard stuff. Do the hard stuff because that's what helps suit you for the long haul. When you
Yep.
stop wanting to walk up a flight of stairs because it's hard, guess what? Eventually you can't walk up a flight of stairs, and I don't want that. So I think stick with the hard stuff, meet the hard stuff, look forward to the hard stuff, and embrace it. And that helps you. That suits you.
Yeah, and opening up your mind to those challenges, I find I try and watch my thoughts and my reactions to certain things. Like when I first started, because I had a little more freedom, not being as busy with my own company, and it would just be me. There wouldn't be a lot of consequence if I didn't go to work that day.
Yes.
So I would look outside and it was like just raining a little bit, and like
Yeah.
you said, it's all perspective. It was like plus 10 Celsius raining, so a cooler day for the summer. But I'm like, I don't know. And even the client's like, if you don't want to come today, it's okay. Like we know it's raining out. I don't know if you can do tree work in the rain. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I just don't want the stress, and I would just kind of give up and not go. And it's like, but
Yeah.
then the next year, as I got more mature, I started to realize like, why am I doing that? And I would see the reaction, and I would try and get over that and put things into perspective on the fact, like you just said, it's cold for some people, but not other people. And I would see how people out there grinding in on the West Coast here, where it's just pouring all winter, and they're doing a ton of work, and it's just above freezing.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, why can't I do that? And then, sure enough, consciously made an effort to work on that mindset. And then these last couple of years, I feel like I never even had to work a bad day or a really hard day. And whether, of course, there was a couple that were pretty brutal, but we did it. We were out there doing it. And a lot of the rain days, it was like not a big deal. Once you're out there, it's like, who cares? We didn't even think about it twice, and no one complained. We still had a great time, and
Yep.
yeah, it was good.
And I think, you know what? I think some people beat themselves up because they don't do that anymore, but they used to. But I want to say, from my perspective, once you do something that's very difficult mentally, you can still do it in the future. The only difference is the physical part. When you stop doing physically hard stuff, your body's not ready to do it anymore. But like, don't discredit yourself saying, "Oh, I can't mentally do that anymore because I don't challenge myself." I think that's the wrong perspective. Your brain does not forget. You're still able. You remember how you used to tough a certain
Yeah.
task. You'll still be able to do that. It's just the physical part.
I read this book earlier this year. I believe it was called The Comfort Crisis. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but this
No.
guy would specifically go out and plan, like, I think once or twice a year. I mean, don't quote me on this, but some sort of like event or outing. And it would be, multiple days, I think beyond like 3 days. And he wouldn't take, technology and stuff. He had kind of all these sort of rules for himself, which you could play with, but it would be something hard. It'd be something where he said it'd be like a 50-50 chance of like actually completing it. Like he would go like ram hunting, like out in the winter with some people, and they'd run out of food, but they'd have to kind of ration it, or some sort of adventurous hike type thing where he may not actually finish and do it, but it'd be something hard, and he'd have to fight through it like physically and mentally, and would always keep doing that. And then it would just put everything else into perspective, and that the rest of his life wasn't very hard because he could get through all those other things, and he
That's
could push
funny.
that limit all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a moving goalpost too, right? That limit thing. I mean, think about it in the terms of the how long did it take someone to do to do that record breaking mile? Or I bet for a while it was like a 5 minute mile was the ceiling, and then someone broke that, and then everybody could do it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Once you get down there and someone does it, it becomes a mentally possible goal, and then
Yeah.
almost everybody can somehow do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm really big on that. It's trying to change your like root
Yes.
subconscious belief about what's possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And that can take like conscious training of like day after day, maybe writing something down or reading something till eventually it kind of sinks in. Like it literally sinks in and then you believe that, or like you believe that this future for yourself is possible and you're already like living in that state even though you're currently building it now. Some people call it law of attraction or whatever it might
Yes.
be. But like, man, that just paves the way and opens up opportunity. And before you know it, it's like you've tricked yourself, brainwashed yourself into
Yeah.
being completely capable to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I see a lot of people discussing things nowadays about getting deep on energy and how your energy attracts more like energy and things like that. And I'd have to say that yeah, the mind's an amazing thing, and the more you can wrap your head around seeing the possibilities, your brain will look for ways to find those possibilities. If you say, I'm
Yeah.
going to build a business and it's going to be this successful, guess what? When you really start saying that to yourself, you start to see ideas and things come to you because you don't see
Yeah.
the things that you see what you're telling yourself, more or less,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And I think that's powerful.
Yeah. And I wonder, I contemplate that too, if like, do the same things always exist? You just can't see them? Or do you attract them to you? I think a little bit of both, but I thought about this exact same thing this last week where I don't know what it was. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed for whatever reason. And I was just kind of grumpy, so I was quiet, and you got that slight facial expression, and then, your family knows it, and then they start reacting because they think you're going to get grumpy. And then you leave and I go to the dog park and then, people are kind of snappy there and whatever. And it's like, geez, everywhere you go, it's just, I even like stub your foot and like all these things are just like happening that are just, I don't know, screwing up your day.
Yep.
And then I had another day. I was feeling like amazing. I feel like I had the world like by the whatever and felt great. And then everywhere you go, people are just like lighting up. It's like you're invincible and no one could ruin your day. You're improving everyone else's day. They're happy. Everyone's more talkative. It's like that like attracts like. And if you can get that vibe higher,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
I
really
don't
good.
disagree with that, and I think there's a lot to trying to be that type of person for those around you that should make people more motivated to do so. When you start to think, hey, my mood affects everyone else's mood, my attitude affects other attitudes around me. If you take it on your shoulders to try to be the good influence there, you are doing a service to those around you, whether they see it or not, and it's empowering when you have that power and you see it.
For sure. And then taking that and making some conscious decisions to surround yourself with others that are always pushing your limits. And maybe you're hanging around with friends even that are sitting around and talking about new ideas and like business and personal development versus maybe some older groups, the ones that you hang out with where everyone sits around and complains about somebody else or talks
Yeah.
about them behind their back or is putting blame for their emotions on something. It's like, take a look around at your groups and who you're hanging out, what you're doing,
Yep.
and get yourself in those high vibe areas and help, get them to selfishly pull you up as opposed to you being drugged down. But
Yep. Yeah.
that could be easier said than done depending on who you know.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this kind of transitions into a bit of longevity in their career as far as planning for the future. And I know that's why I initially reached out to you. You had was it an Instagram reel or something? And you were talking about how to plan for exit from the business or from the industry. Is
Yeah.
this something that's been on your mind for a while after having so many years in
yeah.
the business that you want to be thinking ahead of time until instead of just having it come to an end and be like, oh God, now what am I going to do?
Yeah, I think for sure it's been on my mind for a long time, but not in the sense that maybe some would think. It's not on my mind of, that I am close to an exit on any way, shape, or form. I mean, we have so many things we're still trying to achieve that I don't even know if there's a timeline on that. My father's still part of the business, and he's 21 years older than me. So if that tells you anything about, our timelines,
What'd you say again?
naturally,
Sorry, how old?
my father's 21 years older than me, and he's still
Okay.
part of the business. So,
Yeah.
it's natural for me and my brother, and like it's just part of who we are is to be, invested long term. So it didn't come to me on that level so much as it came to me on talking to friends in different situations where they're like, say, my father per se, where they're the owner of the company and they have no idea what to do with it or how to strategize around retirement because they never planned for it properly because they were so invested in just having a small business and it takes all your time and effort.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of conversations, and there was a lot of questions I didn't have answers to, and I talked to them, and it bothered me that I didn't have answers to it. So that's what led me to start to think on a deeper level, like what is the strategies that are out there? What does make sense for this friend, for that friend in that situation, in this situation, and what could they do to better suit themselves for the future? And it got me thinking, after a lot of these discussions, like that I needed to invest some time to learn more about it for me too, so I could help more people on that note. And I had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. And one group of guys that are friends of mine that caused me to put that post out there is I decided to work as more of an advisor with them, selfishly learning from them at the same time, which is great because relationships like that are just like the relationships I have with, say, Steel, where we both have similar goals and objectives and we're going to do it together and we help one
Yeah.
another and it's genuine and it's organic and it's good.
Yeah.
The outcome is we are helping people, and I think that was what kind of drew me into it. And so I started working with the Canopy Service Partners, and this just happened a few months ago, by the way, and they started educating me on a lot of different ideas out there that you could plan for, for what to do with your baby, your business. And I think a lot of the things that people struggled with was not, oh, I want to sell my business. How do I do it? It's more about like, I want my business to be my legacy. I don't want to just let go of it and say goodbye. Also, I don't have anybody who wants to buy it or I can gift it to. But I also want the people that work for me to have a future and not
Yeah.
go because I'm done. And then also, like, what are my customers going to do? I've served these customers for 20 years, 30 years,
Hmm.
whatever it is. I don't want to walk away from them either because then it feels like not the right strategy. So,
Yeah. Kind of abandoning them, and they've loved having you back every year and
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
expect it, and then all of a sudden
hmm
there's 1,000 people that expect that, and you're gone.
So, yeah, so that's what drew me into it. And the more I got involved, the more I realized like there's a lot of interesting ways to set things up. And you mentioned it, starting early, thinking early on, like where do you want to be at the point of time? When do you want to have an exit of any sorts? What is your exit? There's things you can
Hmm.
do where you give your business to someone. You can do like an employee owned strategy where you do like what they call an ESOP. You could do a combination where you partner with somebody like say a Canopy group, and they help you with funds, and you walk away from doing the stuff you don't want to do because you got to a point where I don't want to do this anymore. This whole thing is a problem for me, but I still want to do this part. I'm still passionate about this. So you
Right.
partner with somebody who will take that stuff from you, maybe even teach you how to do it better, or help your employees, your coworkers do it better. And then you focus on the things that you still feel very passionate about, and that suits everybody because now you're able to free yourself up and do things you love, which excites you, like we're talking about from the start of this whole discussion. And then your business thrives and your people have more room for growth and they start to thrive even more because, let's face it, when you're part of a business that has leadership that isn't passionate about what the future holds, everybody loses steam. Everybody doesn't have that point to rally around. So the more
Yeah.
you can maintain that and have that, the more exciting it is to be a part of it day in and day out. And that's even on a crew level side. When you work with a crew leader that doesn't like what they do, it's miserable for you. It really is.
Yeah.
So, so I think there's just so much you can do that would suit all things, you, your brand, your employees, your customers, your long-term strategy. There's a lot that you can actually set up.
Yeah, and I like how you said you can take what you are good at or what you're passionate about and continue on. It's not like you have to give it all up. Like if you're like me, maybe, where you like to have lots of new ideas and bring in some different shifts in your company, and you like maybe training some new guys, that kind of thing. Maybe that could be your role, but somebody else can, like you said, take over the business and, be in charge of hiring employees and, maybe some basic training, and you're just doing the specialty stuff. Like, what is it for you specifically? What do you enjoy in your company? Like, where do you want to be in the next, whatever, 5-10 years as far as Aspen? Do you want to be just training, just talking, just, do you want to be in the
Not
trees
really.
still?
Yeah. Honestly,
You want to be in the trees?
I can tell you right now, it's selfish of me to climb trees because it's what I enjoy. And yeah, I make good money for the company, arguably top dollar earner, but what I do outside of that is more beneficial to the long-term strategy of the company, the growth, the movement, the visionary aspect, like you're saying, like all the things that you don't have time for when you're just out there making sawdust. So I have to balance it. I have to balance all those for me personally, that I get my personal fill where I do certain things, but I also do the things that are necessary, but then I also do the creative things. So it's like a full kind of gamut approach where I do a little bit of everything is what makes me happiest and makes the company thrive as much as possible. I think without me doing that self-awareness, like kind of deep dive, I don't know that I would be as successful, or the business would be as successful for my part of it. Because I think you really need to really see what is that makes you happy, and also what makes the business happy, and then find that happy medium. I'd almost like, to all the arborists out there, I'd put it in terms of this, like the business and you, the tree and the customer. Like the tree wants this, the customer wants that. How do you marry the two to benefit both as best as possible? That's kind of what I look at. Like the tree doesn't want you cutting off all the limbs off one side for sun on the pool. So
Yeah.
what do? The customer wants it all the sun on the pool, but then the customer doesn't understand that would make the tree not thrive, and eventually they'd have to cut the tree down, or the tree would struggle or whatever. So our job as an arborist is the same in that regard, as you marry the couple things that do the best for both worlds. And I think that's what I try to do as well in that regard.
Nice. Yeah, like a bit more of a holistic kind of approach there. There's something you made me think of there when you mentioned being creative and thinking of those new ideas, because that's a space that I love to live in as well. But do you have problems with this? Like you're probably a lot more mature and experienced than I am, so I don't know if you still do, but getting caught up in sort of that rat race of the day-to-day production tree work. You're out there and you're fixing problems and whatever it is, employee problems or equipment problems, and then you're trying to cut this tree and you're kind of overbooked and you're the top guy, so you're up there doing it, trying to save time, and the cycle sort of repeats, and then you're exhausted and you kind of lose your way a little bit, and you lose sight of the overall, like the bird's eye view vision that at one point hopefully you've sat down and made those value check boxes to see like where you want to go, what you want to do. And then the creativity just kind of starts to shrink and wane, and then you know what I mean? Like, does that ever happen to you, or do you do anything consciously and specifically to balance that?
All the time. I mean, like in the position I'm in with our company now, there's a lot of different things that I'm in charge of, moving parts, you might say, contracts, different parts of the business, and some parts of every week, they need a lot of time, each one of those. The problem is if I'm out in the field climbing trees, for example, to use your point, which is what I do, I can't do those things the same day at the same level as I need to. So what I do is I prioritize things, and I try to set up a schedule knowing that. And that, let's say Thursday is our weekly meetings as management. those are the days I'll schedule like computer stuff I need to do, certain things that require a different energy level, if you will. Because to be honest with you, when I'm out there running crews, phone calls will come in and I look at it and say, all right, do I need to take this now or can I put this off until tomorrow and express that to them? I'll be in the office tomorrow, for example, because the energy isn't there to handle it properly. Some things you can't wait on, but there's a lot of things I've learned that I can say, I'll do this tomorrow. Let me focus on this now because I don't have the energy or the right amount of energy to do it properly right now. So I prioritize. I try to schedule in advance. Not everything will let you schedule in advance. Some things just pop up, but I definitely kind of will sit there and analyze what is going on and think in those terms of like, is this something that I should do right now or have to do right now, or can this be done when I have that different, tension, focus, and energy? And I will put those off for those times in the week, and it's every week I do it. But yeah, it's you're not going to be very creative when you're exhausted physically. I'm sorry, at least I'm not. So I don't try to be creative. I don't set up a podcast with you, Kurt, when I'm, in the field for 8 hours, ripping down a big tulip tree, and then say, hey, I'll do the podcast at night because I won't have the energy. I won't have the mind.
Your brain's just like on coast mode. It's like it needs a break.
I'm dressed like this. I'm not out in the field today because I was doing the podcast today. So I said, let's do it on a day when I have this different energy. Yeah.
That's sweet. Well, I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned, playing on that creative part there, that you still had some things that you guys wanted to achieve or expand with Aspen. What are some of those things, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of goals we set in motion at these meetings, especially our annual meeting we set up. We look at our year in review. We look at our 1 year, our 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, and then we strategize around how we're doing. We make pivots as needed, or we set in new initiatives because something else new came upon us. Let's say we came up with a new strategy that we didn't have when we created a 10-year plan, but now we're 3 years in, but now we see a way to hit 10 years in 5 years because this came about. And we're like, oh, cool, let's change this strategy and rewrite this. And so we come up with all those plans, and some of those plans involve maybe a second location, for example, for tree and turf.
Okay.
What does that mean? Well, it just means we're going to hit a different area. And why? Because we have customers there that are tree customers that we don't service currently that want us to service them. And, but that could be a strategy. And these things are actually really enjoyable as much as learning how to do crane work, better. You know what I mean? It's the same thing for me, just a different animal. And it's another level of enjoyment for me for the longevity aspects is that I read books now on business that I never read 10 years ago. Why? Because my focus was on maybe being a better leader in the field, and 10 years prior to that, I was focusing on being a better tree climber, period.
Right. It depends where you're at.
I call him an influencer. I don't know a better word for him right now, but there's a guy that I listen to some of his podcasts and stuff sometimes, and he talks about it's the seasons of life, and in certain seasons there's different focus points, there's different strategies, and that's what I look at where I am right now. Doesn't mean I'm forgetting about the prior seasons. I'm still really focused on the tree climbing that I did 25 years ago, but and I'm still focused on being a better leader that I was focused on when I became a leader on a different level. And now I'm in the business seat quite a bit, and I'm trying to learn, better ways to be a better business person. And I'm always focusing on that. So I read books on that. I watch podcasts on that. I have discussions with people who are in a place ahead of me in that regard, and I learn from them, mentors, if you will. And I think that's an exciting thing too, because you're never bored if you have things to sink your teeth into. Yeah. The same influencer calls it, you just need a new bone or a bigger bone because you've done all you could on that bone, so you need a new bone to sink your teeth into. And I think that's an interesting way to put it, but it's very accurate, And
yeah,
The power behind it for me personally is that one thing I see is the more I become better as a leader, the more I can help people that I work with. The more I become better as a business person, the more I can help people I work with who trust me to be a good business owner. You know what I mean? So there's motivation behind that. It's big. It's bigger than my own personal motivation. It's other people's livelihoods. It's other people's possibilities and future, you know?
Yeah, and you said like
I gotta plug in,
your
so I'm
company.
just gonna. You don't have to stop talking. I'm just gonna reach under.
Okay, sounds
My
good.
plug came out, and I see my battery lights on, but I'm still here.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem. I'll keep the convo going because I know you said earlier about having your company as a family. And I would
Yes.
imagine that's, you're talking about kind of having some trust and transparency and working through problems together as families do, and being a little bit tighter and not just a place to go to work and peace
Yeah.
out.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that probably does come from the fact that, you were an arborist. Like now that you're maybe in the more of a business role for some of the younger people coming into your crew and whatever. Of course, there's the celebrity thing, but I mean, other than that, you were a guy in the tree, or you still are here and there.
Yeah.
So everyone's sort of doing that job. Like you understand what's going on, and I know there are some business people that do come in from the external to help with those sort of things. But it's nice having a boss that has been there and been through some of those challenges, and then can kind of pivot to a bit of a trainer, but also a bit of a guide, and not just your boss all the time.
Yeah, I get that naturally from my boss, aka my father, aka my
Yeah.
business owner, and all that. So, yeah, it makes it easier when someone paves the way for you and shows you the way. I got a shameless plug that I didn't even know I had right here. This was not planned, by the way. This is just how what a nerd I am. My house, I have stuff for brands that I love. If you look around my house, it's ridiculous. People make fun of me all
Just
the time. Yeah.
just steel flags hanging around everywhere.
Mhm.
I'm a husky guy. I hope we can still be friends, but
Yeah, of course, of course. I got a lot of good friends that are, I got friends that drive Chevys, and I have a Ford pickup, so it is what it is.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that, and I agree with that. I think I always like some people try to talk to me on a level of like they ask me for like, what should I do to be if I don't want to be like just a crew leader anymore, and this and that, and I just tell them like honestly. I don't know if it works the same for you as it did for me, but one thing I know is that to speak to your point, me being in the field for as long as I have, getting good at what I did, build credibility to enable me to be a better manager, to be a better leader, because not just do I speak from a place of I know what's best for the business, I also know what's best for doing what you're trying to do because I did it and I spent time learning how to do it as good as I could, which is where I can help you. So I think it builds credibility. It just enables you to be better naturally without any work. Where if you cheat that time and you don't do it, that's not to say you couldn't be really good at it, but I would say you're going to have to work harder to get the credibility to be able to do it as well as you could. So it's going to be more difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances there, I think, that all contribute to being a good leader. Obviously, a lot of times it comes down to really good communication too. And I mean, being a mature person, I think that helps. There's a lot of life experience in general. Like people can practice a lot of these skills day to day, not just after you sign up for a leadership course and start practicing, but you can work on this stuff all of the time with your family and your friends.
Yeah.
As long as you put yourself in that mindset of where you want to go with it. Yeah.
For sure. And I think the same influencer I quoted earlier, he has something he says about this too. And it's basically, I'm paraphrasing, but if you want a life coach, you need somebody who experienced life, not some young person who didn't do anything yet trying to be the life coach. Same thing like you want business advice, find someone who has a successful business or had a successful business. Don't fall for someone who, is a punching a clock at a low level job somewhere else who never did what you're trying to seek help with because they don't know how to help you. So I think there's a lot of strategy there that works. It's smart.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinion around that too, especially on like the mental health side of things, because I after I got out of the fire department and I was restricted to go back to work because they said, you're basically expired in the mind. You can't do it anymore. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to last. So this worker compensation board said, you're done. Like you got to go through
Yeah.
the program and everything to kind of heal up. And they put you through it. It's mandatory. And it's a lot of occupational therapists and psychologists and young people too. Like nothing against young people, but they were from the mindset of like, oh, I get out of high school, and they had, a suburban life like we all did up here where I live, as far as I know, from hearing from them, and went to school to be a psychologist and go to school, and then they're there teaching you, but they're teaching you from that mindset of like, I went to school, this is what I am, I picked this job, as opposed to someone like a life coach or someone who's, I don't know, maybe even like a shaman or something like that, but somebody who's experienced in going through a life of challenges and pains or whatever it might be, and being able to resolve them on their own and ultimately like ascend in consciousness level and build these greater perspectives and raise their vibration, whatever you want to terminology you want to use for that kind of stuff. But they literally have experience and they can relate and answer some of those questions, and you can feel like they're listening to you, as opposed to someone who's methodically going through it just because they went to school for it.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense too. When you analyze it like that, it's just, it really resonates, because I think it's a lot of what we're talking about, it's what works really. That's what works the best.
Yeah. So people, I hope people don't discredit themselves because they didn't go to college or didn't go to university or whatever. It's like, no, the more challenges that you've had in your life, the more mistakes that you've made, that you've overcome and figured out, like the more experience you have. And those, quote, soft skills, like having good communication, being able to be empathetic or sympathetic with other people around you and see things from their perspectives, like that's going to get you so far in life. And I find those are the foundational things. They're going to make you a good leader, but also a good business person, also a good trainer. It's going to give you the discipline to be a world champion tree climber, all those things.
Yep.
So that's kind of where the overlap comes from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think people shouldn't look at mistakes or shortcomings along the way, failures in other words, as anything but a means to become the success you're meant to be, because you don't tend to go from here to there. There's here, there's here, there's here, there's here, then there's here, you know what I mean? In most people's lives. But without those struggles, you don't learn and get educated. And I think, you said something there that made me think on the same level, is that anything you've done that you've experienced, especially struggles and such, means you have knowledge and things you've learned that can help other people who are going to be in that struggle or are in that struggle. So, don't sell yourself short. There's a lot of value there that you can give, which is, needed out there. So don't be selfish with it either.
Yeah. And there's another thing that just made me think of is, in hindsight, everything seems so easy, and you want to just tell these people what to do, if whether you're a leader or whatever it might be. It's like having kids. Do you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see all the mistakes they're making because you've done it before, right? You just want to be like, no, don't do that, do this. But you learned that because you screwed up yourself and you had to kind of learn the hard way. Like, you don't just take everything you've learned from what someone has told you. In fact, it's probably worse to do that instead of just figuring things out for yourself. Like, of course, accept guidance from other people and different perspectives, but ultimately you got to figure it out for yourself. So I think as a leader, if you can understand that people's learning processes come in different ways, and oftentimes it is from making those mistakes before they can learn, before it will resonate. And then not beating yourself up because they made that mistake, even though you showed them the proper way to do it, or whatever it might be. Or when you make your own mistake, realize it's just an opportunity to learn and move on, as opposed to beating yourself like, oh, I screwed up. Like, this is not what was supposed to happen. And then dwelling on that, like, that's going down the wrong road. Just freaking get over it and take it and roll if you can.
Yeah, I'd kind of think about it in terms of golf. In golf, they say it's good to have, short-term memory. Meaning, yeah,
Yeah.
I just screwed up that last hole, but what you did on that hole could teach you how to better play on this hole if you can let go of what you did and not hammer yourself, but say, hey, change how I approach this next task, if you will, because you've learned from that one and that taught you how to be better at the next one. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work out that way, mind you, in golf in particular, in my case, but it's good to have that ability to be like, yeah, let yourself off the hook. I had
Yeah.
that problem. I made that mistake. What did it teach me? And don't do the same thing again if it's bad. If it made a problem for you, but learn from it, and now you're better prepared for the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, golf's kind of a cool one. I don't
Mm-hmm.
golf, but I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
watched it on Netflix, right? Like everybody else. All those good documentaries that follow these pro golfers and whatever sport it might be. And
Right.
there's a commonality between all these high level sports where it's like they've dialed in their motor functions and everything. They can't really go any higher with all of that. And the only limiting, not the only, but one of the major limiting beliefs for themselves is their own mindset. And you can just see it in people. Like they make that bad shot, and then it's like, oh, and you can just see it on their face, and then things just go wrong, and then the guy that's like winning is just like in that mindset. He's able to like let things go or just be fresh in every moment, and that's the difference between winning and losing at those levels. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of it's mental. And it's so
Yeah, so much mental that you would have no idea. Hey,
Yep.
I don't even know how much mental training they do with that kind of stuff. Hopefully, probably
Yeah.
a fair bit, but I don't know if it's still a new thing in high level. But
I think that's a lot of the need for a good coach in that regard, or a good caddy. They don't just tell you the wind and the distance and what part of the green to hit. They tell you like, hey, forget about that. Just square up and hit that and get your mind on what you need to do, kind of thing. There's a lot of mental things that go on to make you successful, and yeah, there's a lot to be learned from what they do there too.
yeah, are you okay if we circle back to the Canopy Service Partners
Yeah,
group
sure.
you mentioned there earlier? I just made a note of it because
Yeah.
it's something you've been working on. But
Mhm.
can you just explain like what is that? Like what are you doing there?
Canopy Service Partners is a group that comes to companies like mine, other companies, and develops a relationship to say, hey, can we help in any way, shape, or form? Because they're a group that wants to help companies like, say, mine continue to move forward, either with or without me, ideally with me. A group like Canopy will come to a company like mine and be like, all right, is there anything we can help with? Do you need help on the back end? Do you need funding that we can help with and partner
Okay.
with you to help you succeed? And partnering, could be the right strategy for some, not always. Sometimes it's all right. I want to sell my business. I want to get out, and then Canopy will purchase your business, and it'll
Mm,
continue on as the business, and everybody will ideally stay with the business, and then they'll make that business function better because they have the business know-how and the
do they have
funding.
their own?
Huh?
Do they have their own tree company? Like, or are they just
Well, it's a group of tree companies now. There's
gotcha.
I want to say 19 or more different companies in the U.S. that are all part of the Canopy umbrella, but they all
Okay.
function as individual companies, their own companies. So in other
Right, but
words, if
they
I partner with them, it would still be Aspen Tree Expert Company, but Canopy would be a partner of that company and help run it, or it maybe even own it outright, depending on the situation.
right. So they kind of come in from a higher level. They can
Hmm.
kind of analyze things, give you some help if you need it. So
Yep.
you're probably already a certain size company.
Mm,
I would imagine you probably have
depends.
some sort of a
No,
minimum.
it depends. There's a lot of room for, you know, if you're a $2 million a year company, that's a company that could be part of a big strategy in the same area with a partnered with a $4 million or an $8 million. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that go into it. I don't limit it based on you have to be a certain size per se,
Yeah.
unless you're in the middle of a certain region where there's no other people to partner with and you are that small. Not to say that's small, but on their scale, it's small. It's not small on my scale. If
Yeah.
you're in that zone, but yeah.
Are
So
you
they
working?
okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say they come with a lot of ability to help a company streamline, become more efficient, have better buying power, have better outside opinions to say, you could use another salesperson here, or you could, what would help you is to do what we did over here, which is X, Y, or whatever. So there's a lot of like things they can do to help a business to start to thrive if it's lacking, or even just refine one that's already still doing really well. And I think that's an exciting thing to be a part of from my standpoint.
So were you working, just so I understand the perspective here, are you working with them as far as like you're going to be on this team, like part of that company now as like an extra thing?
More like a consulting. Yeah. So what I'm doing is trying to be the go-between more than anything to help friends of mine in the industry who are business owners figure out, from my standpoint, what do I see on the best way to go, rather than going to somebody they don't know, they can't necessarily trust. Not saying they don't trust everybody, but they don't necessarily have that comfort level to say, all right, I'm going to go and talk on a deep level with somebody who, to your point earlier, has been there and done that. I'm in the industry, I know the industry, and now I'm learning another part of business that can help my friends in the industry like myself, and the worst feeling for me, honestly, was like I mentioned, is when people would come to me and ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know how to help you. I don't like that feeling. I want to be able to help. And so the more I learn, the more I realize the group Canopy Service Partners is a group of people that I really like doing, like speaking with and learning from, and they're very helpful. They do things. They'll, I don't want to, this isn't like a commercial by any way, shape, or form, but just personal experiences. I love that the way they came to me to talk to me about our business was very relaxed, very inquisitive, very respectful. They knew we aren't wanting to do anything, but it's a learning opportunity. So they want to have a friendship, if you will, on some level. And this is, over a year long in the making before I realized that if I do something to be, kind of closer to them, it'll enable me to learn more on how to help people I'm already close to on the other side, where now I can start to see things that would actually appear to me like things, I wouldn't have known before, because now I've had conversations with my one friend who said, these are things I'm worried about. And I'm like, that's unique to you. Go back to these guys, say, hey, what can you do for this? And then I'm like, oh, and I give them free advice. And you know what I love about them is they're not after the almighty dollar like so many people I partner with in any way, shape, or form, like Steel, like Cask and Teufelberger, and like other things I've done, groups like TCIA, ISA, people I've worked with closely. There's a deeper purpose, and it has nothing to do with money, that really drives them the most. And it's really like, we just want people to know what's available to them. And if they don't want to partner with us and do business with us on any way, shape, or form, that's fine. We still want to have conversations. We still want to network and be friends with them. We want to develop a relationship. And if we can share information that helps them, if they go another direction, that's cool too, because then we feel rewarded, And when you hear things like that, it makes it easy to say, yeah, that's somebody I want to kind of work with on some level. So
right.
The thing that worked for me is to say, okay, well, I don't want to go work another job per se, but if I can be somewhat of a go-between and help them find good companies to talk to and develop relationships with, and help friends of mine find good people to talk to and learn from, and maybe develop something that works for them, then good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But yeah, it's just another extension. It's almost like the same thing of me saying, I want to learn more about how to be a good aerial rescue technician so I can help people learn how to be better at aerial rescue. You know what I mean? It's just another extension of the same thing.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a natural progression there. My wheels are spinning business-wise, and I'm like, oh, this is on their end. I'm like, this is a great idea on their end, and I mean, it benefits everyone. And I'm a big believer in business and still having profitable business, but allowing everyone to win. Like if there's any kind of, like you said, just chasing money, from that purpose, I don't think it's going to be, in my eyes, successful long term. Like every business to be successful needs some sort of purpose, to be giving back or helping or boosting something
Yep.
other than just taking money from the consumers.
Never lasts.
And so, I mean, if you see a purpose in there, that's great. It obviously aligns with yours. Like you're in that position now where you have some notoriety behind your name, obviously tons of experience, a company that's on the map and all these kinds of things. And if they're kind of coming around and they saw an opportunity in the tree industry to help, be flexible on different mentorships or, anything like you said, even from purchasing all the way over to just a bit of coaching and maybe a partnership or whatever, you'd be an amazing liaison between the two, and you're well connected already. So people can, I mean, it's hard to sell people stuff, right? We all know that, because obviously if it comes from a place of inauthenticity and you feel like you're trying to trick somebody or something, people read that, like their bullshit meter goes off right away. So you being a genuine person and having this experience, it would be advantageous to them to have you with them, but you can also feel like you're expanding on your role probably in life and as in business, and now you're higher level working with other people's businesses, and you can probably get in there and be part of the strategy a little bit, or maybe just make first contact. And sounds good to me.
I agree with that, and I think
Sounds cool.
yeah, I think you're spot on there. I don't try to sell anybody on anything. What I do, like if you said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about my business. I don't know what to do. I want to strategize with you." I want to have a phone call with you for no other reason than I'm going to learn more about what helps you, and maybe I could find a strategy that helps you. And it doesn't matter if you even go any route, has anything to do with, say, anybody, Canopy or anybody else. But if I can learn from that conversation, I do, which is why I always have these conversations regardless. There's no payout in mind for anybody in those regards. And I think, like you said it, people can sniff out when you're after money or you're after something that's not genuinely in their best interest. You know what makes a good sale is just listening to what somebody really wants and needs, and then helping make that happen, period.
Yeah, definitely. And then things will just come. And that's what I'm so excited about with Atmos Tree, is some of this business stuff. And when I get to connect with people that join the Alliance, and we do like a video chat, and it's all about just like, I want to learn about their business and hear what all these different things are doing. And there's like arborists doing like such a wide variety of things out there that are attracted to Atmos Tree that I had no idea. Like they're big into like restoration and making wildlife, wildlife stands and all kinds of different stuff. And it's like, it's really cool. And it really gets me going and fills my cup as far as what I want out of life and purpose with this industry and everything. It's great.
And I'm 100% honest when I tell people this all the time. Like, what I realize is what brings me the most joy is helping people, period. Helping people. Doesn't matter who we're talking about. The people I love, I want to help the most. The people I don't know, I still want to help as best as I can. And the funny part about all that, when you deep dive on yourself about that statement, is it's selfish of me to help people.
I was just going to say the exact...
It makes me feel better about myself and enjoy life and fill my cup. And I know that about myself. So everyone wants to pat someone on the back who is helping someone, and it's great, and I encourage that. But I don't do it for the pats on the backs. I do it because it's selfish. I like doing it, period.
I know. I challenge anyone who's like not feeling well out there and wants to feel better, instead of maybe going out and like just talking about yourself to kind of self-inflate yourself or pump yourself up, brag about something, just go out and like give people compliments, be genuine, ask people how they're doing, and ask them about themselves, all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden you start to learn, you perk them up, and selfishly you're like receiving all of it and making yourself feel better. So you can selfishly make other people feel better. It's like it's a good feedback loop.
It's one of the most selfless things to do, is to help other people, but it helps you too. So is it really selfless?
Okay, last kind of direction here, but where do you think the industry's going? I mean, this could be a big, broad question. Like, do you see areas where we could use some improvement, and where do you just see it naturally heading?
I I see, well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to take that question. One thing I see from the business is I see the arborist industry getting more and more professional across the board. And that's a great thing because the more we can differentiate ourselves from unprofessional people or industries, the better it is for all of us because now, what, like I always say, to be a good arborist, you have to be very highly skilled on so many different disciplines. And I don't know many career paths that require you to be good at so many different things, to be good at what
Yeah.
this one thing is. It encompasses so much, so the more we can make that like apparent to the public, the more we get the credit that's due to all of us that invest our time to be so good. There's no arborist out there that's really good at what they do that doesn't spend so much time of their own time perfecting that skill set, whatever those skill sets are. So professionalism is where I see us heading, and I see it as a very good thing for the industry because it also means you'll be able to get more value to more people and maybe even more value to yourself because you'll get paid more to do the same task you used to not make so good of money doing. Maybe it's a brighter future in that regard. And on the business side, like where are we heading? Hopefully just more responsible, and the idea of sustainability is what I'm hoping is going on. I see a lot of people fighting for that, and it's great. So I hope that's what's really happening is that, the arborist of the future is even more knowledgeable about how to care for trees, how to do the right thing on a large scale, not just for the tree, or the environment or the town, but even on a big scale. Like what is the best way to do what we already do? Because we don't know it all,
Yep.
and the more I'm in the industry, the more I realize like what we thought was the best thing to do in this year turns out it's not even legal anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's kind of how I fell into the tree health side of things. Maybe I'll save the plant health care kind of things for another day that you're incorporating with your business, but I want to talk to some more people about that and how they did it and can incorporate it because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
But when I took an insect and disease course, exactly that. It was like, okay, cool. I took it because people were asking me to prune their trees, and they'd be like, should I remove it? Should I keep it? And I'm like, I don't know. And I felt like I needed to know. I'm like, I'm the professional, and everyone's always like, you're the expert. And I'm like, well, am I? I'm just some guy that started a tree company like 6 months ago. So I took this course, and at the bottom of every insect for each tree was like some chemical. And I was like, I'm like, what is this chemical? And it's like, oh, we can't use that anymore. Everything's illegal now. And I'm like, so what do we do? And then I just started peeling back the layers of like, well, why are the insects there in the first place? Like this is something that naturally happens. And then I peel back the layers, and it got me into like permaculture and like soil health and living soil systems. And I started to find like the root cause for, how we're sourcing trees and planting them and everything. And so this kind of led into what you had mentioned before, where my normal tree company, my day-to-day tree company was kind of had this ceiling on it. And I also wanted to find something else and have a greater impact. And that's how I started Atmos Tree. So I don't know if do you know much about Atmos Tree at all?
No, honestly,
I've
I don't. I
Okay.
only know what I saw so far, but I'm more intrigued now than ever because of what you've been talking about. So
You got time for a quick plug?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had this sort of vision. I didn't know what to do. I honestly, this is gonna sound a bit woo woo, but I kind of like asked the universe. I have a greater purpose. I don't know what it is. Can you help me figure that out, kind of thing? And I downloaded this like idea all in one night about Atmos Tree and came up with all of it and stayed up all night and wrote out this whole business plan. And I was like, yes, we got this thing we can do, and it's going to allow me to have new ideas and expand in the future. So it kind of, selfishly fed that need for myself. But basically, the foundation of it originally was to have this 2-to-1 tree cycle program. So arborists out there, when they're cutting down a tree, we would replace it 2-to-1 off-site, like through Atmos Tree. So you wouldn't have to have a planting division or plant it back on their property, because I know there's a lot of municipalities that require you to replant, but it's on your property, you've got to pay a deposit or all these other problems. So I was like, why don't we plant them off-site, and we'll come together as arborists and do this, and we'll just charge a small recycling fee. So we have a bunch of people in the US, and they charge $20 to the client when they remove a tree, and then we look after planting 2
I do know that.
offsite to offset the removal. And we provide like all this branding because we want to promote them, and then they can affiliate, and it doesn't cost arborists anything. So I want it to be like a win-win-win for everyone across the board. And then that has really expanded where like the 2-to-1 tree cycle program isn't even at the forefront of my mind anymore, because in the beginning, of course, I'm like, oh, I got to get these guys to charge money and whatever. And as soon as you start thinking about money, it's like everything goes down. And it's like switch went off. I'm like, no, this is about the passion. This is about what I want to do and how I want to bring everyone together. And then now I can organically talk about it and come up with new ideas that align with its purpose. And the kind of root purpose of Atmos Tree is to provide everything back to the industry that other courses don't. So everything up to and including, or sorry, before removing a tree. Like, are we talking about how we can preserve this tree? Are we talking about how we can fix the soil? Are we considering other plants that are planted around it, the turf there? Are we using like organic amendments? Can we have business strategies to reuse our mulch and provide just like a ton of education around everything? And then last ditch effort, if you have to remove the tree, but you're already educating everything else, then we can use a 2-to-1 tree cycle program to replace it off-site. So
Cool.
yeah,
it's
man,
nice,
sweet.
Nice to have that strategy. You know,
Yeah.
It's a big purpose. You know, like you said, that's cool. I remember you
Yeah, so
talking
really
about
hoping
this
to.
now. Actually, I have heard this now that you mentioned it. I just didn't remember it being Atmos. Now I do.
Atmos, yeah, sweet, man. Well, maybe I'll send you over some info. You can check it out.
Yeah, that's
We
cool.
just got the website all kind of fired up, and we're growing there too. I'm learning about that. We have like 5 people now working on it, and
That's
it's
cool.
going good. But I'm learning a lot about
I
that
imagine.
sort of side of business and expanding an online type thing. And oh my God, it's a whole nother can of worms. So yeah,
I can
but
imagine.
fun though.
Yeah, fun is right. Yeah, but yeah, it's going to be experience. It's going to be, step by step, pivots and navigations.
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah,
100%. And hoping I can give back a lot to
that's
everyone in
great.
the industry.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah, I love that, Kurt.
yeah, buddy, thanks so much.
Yeah, man.
Well, is there anything else you want to add? Tell the world. It's probably going to be the most successful podcast you've ever done. Just putting that out there. Just putting that out there.
I think, honestly, I think, just I guess the last message we had is just think about how you can give back on any level. The worst thing you can do is have some gift, some value that you could help people with and just keep it to yourself. That's the most selfish thing you could do in this world, in my eyes, is just not help other people with things you're gifted with and knowledge you have and experiences you've had. So yeah, make it your mission, everyone listening, to get out there and give your gift away, do what you can.
For sure. Everything has something to offer. Everyone's had their own life from their own perspective, and we can share and combine and learn from each other. Definitely.
For sure.
I love it. And then where can people find you? Like, are you putting it out there now that if people are interested in some of the things you mentioned about some consulting with their businesses, if they don't know where to go as far as how to transition out, is there a contact for that through yourself or?
I just tell everyone they'll track me down some way. Easy ways to find me is like message me on Instagram or on TikTok. Just find my name and message me, or go to Tree Buzz and hit contact, or find me on the forum and message me there. I'm not hiding in any way, shape, or form. I'm always available, and I look forward to hearing from people, because again, when I have these conversations, people hesitate sometimes. You're like, oh, you're busy. I don't want to take up your time and have a phone call with you to try to help me, but it helps me always, so I'm always interested. So yeah, reach out if I can help.
Awesome, dude. Sounds good. Okay, well, thanks again. Maybe one day we can do it again and talk about your plant healthcare program, because I want to provide some resources for that.
Sounds
eventually.
good. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay, don't hang up yet. I'm just going to press stop, and then our stuff will just keep uploading here. See you, everybody.
See ya.